Okay, you may have heard that the SAVE Act, which will disenfranchise millions of women and rural voters, has passed the House. But there are a few things you might not have heard about it and a few things you might not understand about its proponents. First off, 4 Democrats in the House voted for this bill. Every single one of y'all, what are you doing? What are you doing? Democrats are supposed to be the united party of no, standing against every single part of Trump and the Christo-fascist agenda. What the fuck are you doing? This is not just a proof of citizenship bill. This is not a bill requiring proof of citizenship to vote. It's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in the US. This is a bill that requires you to provide your birth certificate, and your legal ID and voter registration must match the name on your birth certificate. I've seen the numbers listed as somewhere between 9 and 20 million women voters will be disenfranchised by this bill. Because I don't know about you, but my married name is not listed on my birth certificate. Also meant to disenfranchise trans voters, anybody who has difficulty obtaining their birth certificate by the registration deadline. This is active voter suppression. As I said on Blue Sky, the reason that they're doing this is because they can't win unless they cheat, unless they disenfranchise voters, unless they suppress the vote. They want to prevent millions of women from voting because they know that their agenda is deeply unpopular with women. But it goes a step further than that. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and other Christo-fascists, Project 2025, they don't want women to vote at all. They want a head of household vote. If you who come from a conservative Protestant background in the US may be familiar with the concept of federal headship. These guys want the husband in the household to vote for everybody else, one vote for each household, and the man gets to cast it. You know what they used to say before women had the right to vote? If a woman has a husband, she has no need of suffrage. And to take it a step further, what they want is for every unmarried woman to fall under the authority of her father. So if you're 30 and unmarried, you still wouldn't get a vote. Your dad would still vote on your behalf. This is the same thinking, the same ideology that in conservative churches all across America prevents single adult women from taking communion unless she goes up with her father, or unless an elder serves as a proxy for her dad, because she must fall under the federal headship of a man, either a husband or a father. That's what they want to do with our voting. Okay, I want to get into more about why 4 Democrats voted for this bill and whether it will pass the Senate, but I'll do that in the next video. Okay, I just made a video about how a god-awful bill meant to suppress the votes of millions of women around the United States just passed the House. Now, first off, you might say, okay, Angela, this is not going to pass the Senate. There's the 60-vote threshold of the filibuster. Cool. How did that work out when it came to voting for cloture and the continuing resolution? Democrats are weak. They do not vote as a bloc. We just watched 11 Democratic senators vote to confirm Trump's batshit COVID conspiracy theorist nominee to be ambassador of Japan. So you need to be on the horn immediately, calling your Democratic senators saying, don't you fucking dare let this SAVE Act get passed. There are no circumstances under which you let Republicans get their 60-vote threshold. You should call right now and call again later and call again tomorrow and keep calling until they understand that they dare not vote to let this go through. But then I want to talk about the 4 Democrats in the House who voted for this. My congresswoman asked what Democrats can do to win back the trust of their voter base because their approval ratings are at an all-time low. What can they do to win back the trust of the American electorate if they ever hope to reclaim the House and the Senate in the midterms? They've got to do that. And I said, well, they could start by growing a spine and no longer voting to support any of Trump's agenda. They need to be a unified party of no. Absolutely nothing of Trump's agenda gets through them. They need to be on the record resisting fascism for every single bill and resolution. Part of the reason they're so deeply unpopular is because they are accurately, appropriately perceived as weak, and as I like to say, feckless and impotent. We need to see them aggressively stand up for the rule of law, aggressively stand up for democracy, and to understand that their colleagues in the House and the Senate that are Republicans are fascists. I'm so tired of hearing from Democrats that Republicans in Congress are essentially good people. They're just scared of Trump. And so they're voting to dismantle democracy. They're voting to actively harm working class Americans, to take away our rights, to make us suffer. So no, they are not good people who are just scared of Trump. They are cowards or they are complicit. They're either outright fascists or they are appeasers. Either way, they are responsible for their votes. I don't give a shit. Do you not think the American people are not scared? And yet we are resisting fascism. So I don't want to hear another Democrat tell me how Republicans in the House and the Senate are essentially good people. And I definitely do not want to see Democrats voting in line with Republicans. Pause to read. These are the 4 Democrat members of the House who voted along with the Republicans for the SAVE Act today. You know, the act that will disenfranchise tens of millions of voters, mostly women, mostly rural voters. If one of these folks is your rep, you need to call them now. Ed Case of Hawaii, Henry Cuellar of Texas, Jared Golden of Maine, not surprising, and Marie Gluesenkamp Perez of Washington State, also not surprising. Marie's district is about 25 minutes north of me. She's my bestie's congresswoman, and he has definitely let her know what he thinks about her voting record thus far. I understand she is somebody who flipped a red district, and she loves to talk about how she is a compromise, work across the line, bipartisan, understands the needs of red, conservative Republican Americans, kind of a representative. I understand she is walking that line, and her district is not deeply blue. It is a district that flipped from red to blue. So I want to share with you a little bit of her statement and tell you why I call bullshit and why her position is actually a dangerous one. She said, "I do not support non-citizens voting in American elections." Cool, Marie. It's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in United States elections. We didn't need this act to declare that. Voting in our nation's elections is a sacred act belonging only to American citizens. Yes, that is already the law. No, your vote for the SAVE Act does not reflect that principle. Because you know that the SAVE Act is really about disenfranchising women especially by requiring that our ID and our voter registration match our names on our birth certificates. Married women across this country are going to get fucked by this if it passes, and you know that. Rural Americans who have less access, less ability to gain a copy of their birth certificate and make sure that their ID matches their birth certificate will also be disenfranchised. That's a chunk of your voters. A lot of your voters are rural. This is the dangerous part of your statement, Marie, where you try and justify voting for something that's reprehensible because you don't think it'll get signed into law. You said, "I also understand the SAVE Act stands no chance of passage in the Senate due to the filibuster." So you voted for something that you are hoping will not get turned into law because you know that it is wrong. You said it has several deeply flawed provisions. Yeah, like disenfranchising millions of women, suppressing the votes of millions of women. And this is where it's dangerous. You are trusting Democrats in the Senate to do the right thing. How did that work out with the vote for cloture? Chuck Schumer cannot whip Democrats in the Senate to vote as a united bloc to save his life. And not only that, he himself votes against what the Democratic Party and the American people want. He is not a leader for this moment in history, and it is foolish of you to place your trust in Democrats in the Senate at this point in time. You said democracy depends on the confidence of our elections, so I encourage House leadership to instead consider bipartisan legislation that can pass both chambers, such as your own Let America Vote Act. Blah, blah, blah. Y'all can go to her website to read the rest of her letter. If that is what you really think, that there should be bipartisan legislation that would do what? Confirm the laws that are already on the books that only American citizens get to vote? Then why did you vote yes for the SAVE Act? Why did you put your name down in history as voting to suppress the votes of millions of American women? Why did you do that? Because now Trump and Mike Johnson and everybody else can say, this bill has bipartisan support. You put your name down on the wrong side of history. If you want to earn back the trust of the American people and get any Democrat to be excited about voting for you, get anybody who is terribly upset with what the Trump regime is doing to consider voting Democrat in the next election. You cannot look like you are supporting Trump's agenda. You cannot look weak. You cannot look passive. You must take a strong stance for democracy and the rule of law and a strong stance against the Christo-fascists like Mike Johnson and the tyrants like Donald Trump. This should be the easiest slam dunk Democrats have ever had, and y'all continue to fumble it over and over. Get your shit together.